Explain the cartoon on the wall.
One, one of the elements of the creation of these mice, these animal models of human disease, was that it coincided with a time that the Supreme Court had just decided that life forms could be patented. And as an obedient employee of Harvard Medical School, Tim and I, reported this invention to our Office of Technology Licensing as an invention and a discovery, which we disclosed to them, and which potentially would be patentable. And they consulted with a patent attorney, and the matter was patented. And what really received a lot of publicity wasn't the fundamental science that was generated by creating these animal models, or even so much about their potential utility, which has proved to be quite great, actually, but the fact that they were patented. And that was grist for a lot of cartoonists' mills. And one of the cartoons that turned up was this little one that we refer to, and I think in the LA Times, which shows Mickey Mouse reaching out for the finger of God, the spark of life. And it's both amusing, of course, and ominous when you think about it. But it was only one of many different cartoons.
Well, let's talk about that issue, because
Sure.
because it's a controversial issue wherever you come down on it. I mean, the fact is, the private sector has an enormous amount of control now in these matters. How do you feel about that?
Well, as you point out, there are many issues. First of all, there's a whole community that's very sensitive about the utilization of animal models in research. So there are the so-called animal rights folks. And we deal with animals in a most respectful way, so that we think, though, that they are essential, that if you're going to, for the reasons that I outlined, if you're really going to understand cancer, you've got to have access to the systems and the assays in terms of animal models that you can use to really make the discoveries that will allow you to someday conquer this disease in its entirety. And as I said before, you can do a lot in tissue culture, but there comes a point at which you have to encounter the disease in the context that it actually occurs, which is an animal model. So that's a concern, and there are people of sincerity and well-intentioned people on both sides of that argument. But my own sense is that to step aside from an opportunity to advance human health and conquer the really awful disease that cancer is, we must do this work. It's an imperative. That's one element. The other element that you referred to, of course, is should these life forms be subject to patent? And that's an issue that, once again, is open to an interesting argument. Patents are inscribed in our Constitution. I mean, it's the utility of patents of creating a limited opportunity for an inventor to exploit the fruits, or to realize the fruits of his or her inventiveness, is something that, as I said, is recognized both in the Constitution and in law. So we easily understand that someone who invents something, in order to encourage that, we give that person a monopoly. So, and that's true whether we're talking about electronics or any mousetraps, for that matter, or songs or books in the form of copyright. Now, the opportunity to patent an object, and in this case animals, then creates an environment in which someone can hope to obtain a financial return if they choose to invest in that process. So the work that we did was supported actually by an industrial concern, DuPont. And they made a significant investment in that research. This is one of the products that could emerge from it, and did emerge from it. And they are incentivized to make further investments in this process by virtue of the return that they'll receive. I mean, that's our system. You know, you may like it, you may not like it, but that is our system.
But does the private sector bring resources to the table that otherwise would not be available?
That's absolutely. Private sources in this case supported the research, made the original investment in research. Somebody has to feel that they can get a return on this so that they'll set up a system to make these animals available, to create the breeding facilities that allow them to be used, and all the investment in veterinary information and services that is necessary for this sort of thing to happen. So it requires a considerable investment, and in order to achieve a return on that investment, the patent system is brought in. I remember it used to be the policy at the National Institutes of Health, it no longer is, but it used to be the policy at the National Institutes of Health to pursue patents, to obtain patents on their discoveries, and then to dedicate the patent to the public domain. Now that sounds terrific. What could be better than that? The government has achieved a patent, and it has then dedicated it to the public domain so anybody can use it. The problem with that is, as I've encountered it, was that nobody was interested. Unprotected by patents, nobody was ready to make the investment in the utilization of that technology. You know, I wish the world were different, but that's what it seems to be like. And the NIH has changed that policy, and that's made a tremendous difference, because I think in no field has there been a more dramatic change in transferring technology to the public good than there has been in biology over the last 20 years.